Hey everybody, it's Midwest Comic Man. And today on episode 4 of Inside the Covers, we're going to be continuing with Planet Comics. We'll be doing issue 4 from Fiction House. I'll start with the cover. It's a Charles Sultan cover. Fits the Fiction House style. You got space combat, futuristic cities, and Flint Baker hitting some great alien so hard his space helmet shatters. And then on page 2, the inside front cover, we have another ad about the crime of the month, where you read all 4 Fiction House titles and solve the crime, and you can make money just like a big-time sleuth. And then we have the first story, which is Flint Baker by Star Gaza. Flint and Mimi are returning from their last adventure on Pluto. As they have escaped the planet's gravitational pull, they turn off the rocket engines as the ship continues on its own momentum, and they adjust the magnetic directional beam control. So on the next page, they figure the journey to Earth is going to take 2 weeks. While they're passing Jupiter, the ship lurches violently. They have been attacked by a space monster, a stratosphere serpent. They try to blast it with a ray gun, but it has no effect. So on the next page, Flint grabs a sword. He goes out to fight the serpent. Sinuous tendrils encircle him with crushing force. And just as he's about to pass out, he strikes a mighty blow, and Flint splits the head of the foul beast, and mortally wounded, it looses its hold on the ship. On the next page, as the creature lets go, the ship lurches forward, and it throws Flint into space as the ship roars away at 10 miles per second. I think he's kind of screwed. They notice Flint has been thrown off and circle back. He clambers into the ship and says, "You're safe, but not so fast. Hundreds more monsters are speeding to the ship." So on the next page, Flint brings them to land on Jupiter, knowing the creatures cannot survive the atmosphere. Flint and Mimi start exploring as their men work on the ship. They find a moving roadway, and it leads them to a great city. There must be an advanced civilization on Jupiter. The next page, they enter the city and the gates close behind them, trapping them. People are huddled around in rags, and Flint asks them who they are. It turns out they are the people who built this massive city of Zoo, but their master has enslaved them and watches them through his great eye. Sauron much? On the next page, he also listens to them with a great ear, and speaks with a great mouth, which begins to speak. He dooms the Earthlings to death by fire. Mimi is frightened. The mouth says, "And if you doubt my power, watch the old man over there." Suddenly, the old man bursts into flame and disappears. That escalated pretty quickly. On the next page, Flint whips out his ray gun and trains it on the great eye. A great scream is heard as the eye disintegrates. The mouth shouts that Flint is going to pay for his deed. Flint tells Mimi they'll break out, but the ear hears all, and the mouth shouts they cannot leave Zoo. On the next page, as Flint and Mimi approach the gate, it bursts into flame. And the great mouth sends will slaves to capture them, big, dull-witted creatures. They grab Flint and Mimi and tell them they'll be ground up as food for the great mouth. That sounds less than pleasing. While struggling with one of the creatures, Mimi manages to snap the cord controlling it, and it instantly becomes motionless. Mimi tells Flint how to stop them, and he evens the odds. And they continue to run towards the other captives. Next, cornered against the wall, Flint directs the slaves to form a human ladder. Flint and Mimi get over the wall and pledge to return to save them. They return to their ship and come back blasting a hole in the wall. They must have been pretty quick. They rescue the slaves and blast into space, headed to Earth. And we'll have more Flint Baker next issue. Next is another standby from Planet Comics' Oro, Lord of Jupiter. People of Oro City gather to watch, a strange sight, as a rocket nosedives into the atmosphere. Ship crashes into the lake and sinks. Oro rushes to the rescue and dives in the lake. When he emerges from the water, he's carrying a small boy, and he takes him to the palace to recover. Apparently he is Jano, Prince of Saturn. He was dethroned and shot into space by his mad uncle, who has created a ray that can destroy the solar system. Oro pledges to help defeat him. Meanwhile, the mad uncle Thogra plans to attack Jupiter first. The next page, Oro and Jano land on Saturn, near Jano's castle, and are not seen. Oro kills a sentry, and using a hatchet, cuts footholds in a tree to reach Thogra's room. But the noise awakens Thogra, who awakens with a, "What the hell?" Next page, he comes out onto his terrace. Oro grabs Thogra and puts him in a sleeper hold Adrian Adonis would be proud of. Good night, Irene. Jano ties him up, and they put him in a closet. And Oro disguises himself as Thogra. As a test, he walks past all the guards successfully without any of them knowing the better. The next page, Jano returns to Jupiter and leads Oro's fleet to Saturn. Meanwhile, Thogra breaks free and convinces a guard of the imposter. They rush into the laboratory where Oro has found the death ray. Rushing towards Oro, he turns it on them, blasting them all to bits. Then the remaining soldiers flee, and Thogra pledges to kill Oro himself. He shoots and wounds Oro, but Oro turns the ray on Thogra, killing him. Just then, the Jupiter fleet lands, and Jano makes sure Oro gets the finest medical aid. We will have more Oro next issue. The third story is the Red Comet. Red Comet spies an Earth ship landing on Vegeto, planet of deadly plants. He follows them in as no man has ever returned from there alive. It is full of intelligent plants, and they are all deadly. The next page, Comet lands and immediately begins his search. He finds the abandoned ship of the Earthlings. Meanwhile, the Earthlings are exploring and excited at all the new plant life. But suddenly, the plants surround them and take them prisoner, and they're thrown into a huge pit. On the next page, Comet finds the Earthlings inside a pit, with vines encircling them. He says he will return with aid. He rockets to Earth. Seriously, he's moving fast, and finds termites. He shrinks to termite size and asks the termites to feed on the vines for him. The next page, the termites swarm into Comet's ship, and he rockets back to Vegeto, releasing the incidents. The termites begin to feed on the plants. Plants attack Comet as a last resort, but he transforms himself to a giant and splinters the trees. Why didn't he just do that at the beginning instead of going back to Earth and then back to... I don't know. Then the termites continue to attack and eat all the vines in the pit. Comet reaches down and lifts the Earthlings out of the pit and brings them to their ship. He then transforms to normal size, and the woman starts fawning all over him and asking his name. But Comet has no time for such distractions and says his identity must remain secret. With that, he blasts off for more adventures the next issue. Next is Captain Nelson Cole of the Space Force. There's a gala banquet to celebrate the third centenary of the Space Force, with Captain Cole as guest of honor. There's food and much dancing. But suddenly, a score of dancers fall dead as a death ray cuts a fatal path through the celebrants. The next page, Cole avoids the beam, but he is the primary target. As the beam stops, a ship blasts off. Cole uses a spyglass, and it is Felon, the dastardly foe from last issue. Felon gives chase with the Solar Force, and while passing over a volcano on Earth, a beam shoots out and Felon's ship disappears, as do the pursuing Space Force. They have been hurtled back through time into the 20th century. The next page, they've been transported to World War II. Felon immediately contacts the Axis powers and offers his services. Meanwhile, Cole is fascinated with the archaic relics of the 20th century. Then, Felon leads a fleet of bombers across the sea and ruthlessly bombs helpless cities and towns. The next page, half of New York City is destroyed. People of Earth are panic-stricken. Cole orders the Solar Force to the rescue. He sees Felon's ship leading the bombers, and a furious battle begins involving spaceships, machine gun-armed bombers. Next page, Felon realizes his forces are outmatched, as Cole's forces chase them out to the sea and shoot them down one by one. Felon escapes like the coward he is. Cole contacts the Allied generals and says he'll put a stop to the fighting in Europe. He flies over the battlefields with a paralyzing ray, stopping action at the front. The next page, Cole forces the world leaders to the peace table, and they have no choice but to sign a treaty, which ends the war to much rejoicing. Cole now begins his search for Felon, circling the globe from the tropics to the polar regions. Then, Felon's ship is sighted, but as Cole gives chase, Felon's ship is hit by a meteor and lands in a glacial valley. Cole lands nearby and follows Felon's footprints into an ice cave. Felon turns and warns Cole to not come any closer. His deadly ray gun spits atomic fire and huge chunks of ice fall to block the passage. Felon thinks that is the end, but Cole also has a ray gun. Next, Felon leaves the cave, but Cole has already broken through and sees Felon blast off. Cole gives chase again. Felon enters the beam at the volcano and is transported back to his present day, and Cole also enters the beam, but he loses Felon on the other side. He inquires everywhere to see if he can find Felon's whereabouts. The next page, Cole is despairing that he will ever find Felon, pledging to never rest until he finds him. At that very moment, Felon's ship flies past as Cole gets an urgent call from the spaceport, saying that they too saw Felon. Cole loses no time in giving chase, as Felon has already killed several with his death ray. On the next page, Cole has an idea at the mention of the death ray and inspects his ship. Everything is in order and Cole blasts to the outer universe, to a small planet, rich in burnium, which is used in death rays. He suspects Felon is here. While he is searching, he causes a rock to fall, and Felon, in his nearby stronghold, hears the crash. The next page, as Cole searches the planet, Felon watches and releases a torrent of water. Cole notices just in time and leaps to safety. He spots Felon quarters and enters, gun drawn. He surprises Felon, who turns to run, but Cole shoots him with a paralyzer ray. On the next page, the chase is over. Cole carries Felon back to his ship and rockets back to Mars. Cole is greeted by his men at the spaceport, and Felon is put in a prison. Cole receives a medal, but feels his greatest achievement was bringing peace to the 20th century. More Captain Cole next issue. Next, we have a text story, The Mist Men of Mercury. Kirk was despairing as he hurtled on endlessly in his spacecraft. It seemed only yesterday he was on Earth, a prisoner of a dictator in a concentration camp. There he met a scientist who told him he had created a spacecraft. Kirk escapes and boarded the craft as the soldiers chased him. He blasted off just in time. As he reminisced, the ship begins to slow. It comes in for a landing, Mercury by his calculations. He exits the ship and almost passes out from the heat, but a cooling mist surrounded him. The mists were intelligent beings, keeping him safe. On the next page, we find the Mercurians were far advanced over Earth. As they learned from Kirk of the wars on Earth, they put a plan into motion. Back on Earth in 1945, a great mist fell over the entire Earth. The soldiers kept fighting and dispersing the mist, but it kept coming back. Finally, the mist fell over the Earth for good, and all of humanity was silent. Then, in time, the mist rose and disappeared forever. While the humans were in dreamless sleep, they forgot what war was. They had no idea what guns were and melted them down to make tools. From then on, Earth lived in peace. As if. Next page, it's yay! Spurt Hammond, the Planet Flyer, is back. Our favorite. In this story, Spurt is tasked to get through to Venus, as birdmen from Mercury are attacking ships and holding them for ransom. The next page, as he prepares his ship, a buxom blonde comes running up, stating her father is the consul on Venus and she must get through. Spurt tells her they don't take passengers, but then he's confused by her plunging neckline and says, "I'll make an exception in your case. Let's go." The next page, as they approach Venus, the Birdmen block their way with artificial islands. Spurt rebuffs their request for a toll, and they paralyze his motor. He puts Janice in a parachute as he prepares to dive his ship into their islands. On the next page, the Birdmen's blockade holds, and they begin to attack. Janice and Spurt jump from his ship, and their parachutes open. However, the Birdmen see them, and they are seized in midair. The next page, they are carried to one of the islands and held for a prison ship. Spurt gets in one good shot, but they are taken on the prison ship. Janice is taken to a private cabin. That can't be good. Spurt realizes if he could free the prisoners, he would have an army. On the next page, Janice is in the captain's cabin, in danger of nefarious deeds. But she shoves a table into the captain, then brains him, and steals his keys. Using his keys, they free the prisoners, who break up their bunks for weapons, and they take over the prison ship. The next page, they travel from island to island, picking up prisoners and then blasting the islands to oblivion once the prisoners are saved. They then head to Venus with all the rescued prisoners. And as always, we will have more of Spurt next issue. The next story is Buzz Crandall of the Space Patrol, Adventure at the Center of the Moon. Dr. Curran brings news the moon is set to explode from generation of excess hydrogen at the core. A hole is drilled to let the hydrogen escape, but none comes out. Dr. Curran, Buzz, and Sandra plan to travel to the moon's core. On the next page, they also invite Dr. Xenon, who secretly hates mankind. Dun dun dun. He could be rid of them easily, but he likes doing things the hard, interesting way. Like most villains in movies and whatnot. It always never works. He places a box on the table. What could it be? The four travelers head to the core. Next page, Dr. Curran cannot see why the hydrogen won't escape. Suddenly, their sphere they're in swings against the wall, throwing Sandra to the floor. Dr. Xenon grins, and they slow their descent. The sphere comes to rest at the bottom of the hole. Next page, they discover the hydrogen cannot escape because a river is flowing over it. They plan to divert the river. Suddenly, Buzz falls into the river. Dr. Crandall shouts for help, but Dr. Xenon ignores him and opens the mysterious box. And then, tiny creatures emerge from the box. They secrete acid that can eat away the supporting columns of the dome at the moon's center. Xenon runs back to the sphere. Buzz is suspicious and follows him, and Xenon shouts, "At last, you shall all die! Ha 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 ha!" The next page, the acid is eating through the supports. Buzz hears ominous rumblings and rushes to save the others. With a roar, the ceiling collapses, narrow missing Buzz, Sandra, and Dr. Curran. Xenon, however, is caught in his own trap. Buzz lifts the debris from the sphere, and they ascend just as the explosives they set to divert the river go off, and they allow the hydrogen to escape. And we will have more from Buzz and Sandra next issue. Next, we have a new feature. Kenny Carr of the Martian Lancers. Kenny Carr's enlistment has ended. He's leaving Mars to settle down in London. His superiors scheme to get him to re-enlist. As Kenny sits on the train, he overhears a plot to attack the outpost at Basha. On the next page, he immediately switches trains and heads back to the fort. The colonel will only talk to Kenny if he re-enlists. So Kenny re-enlists and his men rush in and tell him it was all a plot. Before he has a chance to murder them all and drink blood from their skulls, there's the crack of rifle fire outside. I mean, seriously, making a dude enlist is a joke? The next page, the fort is being attacked. This was supposed to be part of the plot, but it is not ending. The men on the train were not the plants. The information about the attack was correct. The artillery roars into action, and the enemy is repulsed with heavy losses for every wave they send. The next page, after losing half their army, the enemy flees in terror. Back at the fort, they apologize to Carr for the ruse. But Carr says, "Guess I was just meant to be a soldier forever." With that, they start getting drunk, and we'll have more next issue. Next, we have Gail Allen of the Women's Space Battalion. This is the first appearance of what becomes a long-running feature in Planet, and it starts in typical 40s fashion. The guy sends for a battalion to aid a group captured by pirates from Pluto, and they send a squadron of women. He says, I asked for men, not a knitting circle. Way to be politically correct there. Next page, somehow containing her rage, Gail and the battalion follow Jack to Pluto, where they're caught in a volcanic smokestorm. Jack's plane crashes, but Gail locates him and lands nearby. Jack has been captured by Plutonians, and Gail smugly comments, What a He-Man! Gave up without a fight. The next page, the women's battalion finds a strange city and lands nearby as Gail attempts to rescue Jack. They begin to take fire from the pirates and say, the hell with this, get back in their planes and firebomb the crap out of the city. The lost squadron is rescued and starts drooling over their rescuers. Meanwhile, Gail creeps up behind Jack's captors and shoots him in the back. As they take off, Jack sees the ruined city and says, guess your girls got beat. Gail says, bah, your male squad is safe on Saturn already. Who's the sissy now? More Gail and her sassiness next issue. Next, we have space facts, such as the Egyptians thought the Milky Way was a river to take dead pharaohs to the next life, and the sun is huge, and how eclipses work. We also have, again, Clue 4 for the case of the frightened killer. We would need to read the other Fiction House books for the other clues. And then next we have Jim Giant, the strongest man in the universe. We have hordes of savage warriors descending from the north, with ray guns and strange land sleds that travel 100 miles an hour. Who can save the world from this onslaught? The next page we find out that the invaders come from the far north, where an ambitious ruler plots to take over the world. His televisor globe shows the progress of his legions, and he broadcasts his orders. The men shoot everybody they see with lethal electro waves, and their land sleds crush thousands. No one is safe. Millions are terrified. On the next page, we meet Jim Giant, the mightiest man on Earth, and he's watching the attack with his scientist friend. His friend says, I'll send Jim after them. He loads him into a giant catapult and flings his ass up there. He finds a ruined city and asks a survivor where they went. He points south and tells them that he has no chance. The next page, Jim catches up to the land sleds and cuts across some hills to get in front of them. With a giant leap, he lands on one of the machines. He grabs the headlight and pulls with all his strength, overturning the sled. On the next page, he lifts the wrecked machine over his head and hurls it into the other machine, wrecking them all. The warlord crawls from the wreckage, crying as his dreams of empire are ruined. He blames Jim, but Jim says the cause of your downfall is greedy ambition. More Jim Giant next issue. Inside the back cover, we have an ad for Jungle and Fight Comics, as well as, those are both issue number 4, as well as Jumbo Comics 14, along with a release schedule for the Fiction House books. Each the best of its kind. Read all 4 and join the Manhunter contest. And then finally, on the back cover, we have an offer to get the complete works of Shakespeare for 89 cents. Then more volumes will follow. Probably for $832 a volume if it's anything like how most of these work today. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and sub me up. I put my website for my cleaning and pressing business in the description below, continuing to make updates to the site as time allows. If you need any info, my email address is on the website. The next episode of Creator Spotlight is going to highlight Mac Rayboy. Stay tuned for that, as well as the next issue of Inside the Covers, which will spotlight Planet Comics number 5. If there are any comics creators you would like to see spotlighted, or an issue you would like to see on Inside the Covers, please let me know in the comments below. Make sure you tune in for Comic Core on Friday nights, Comic Community's happy hour where just about anything can happen, as we saw at C2E2. And also, on Sunday nights, make sure you tune in for Blaster Stash It, which is the best reviews of new books in the community. Until next time, this is Midwest Comic Man, coming at you from the funny pages.